When a 5-year-old girl found a millionaire lying helpless on the road, she dialed 911, and that call changed both their lives forever. The afternoon sun hung low over Willowbrook, painting the streets in shades of gold and orange. Shadows of tall buildings stretched across the cracked pavement, and the smell of warm asphalt drifted in the air. Little Jennifer Hayes, only 5 years old, skipped along the sidewalk, her tiny pink backpack bouncing with every step. The zipper was halfway open, and a well-worn stuffed bunny's ear flopped lazily in the warm breeze. She hummed the little tune her teacher had taught her that morning, her small voice carrying the innocence of a child who believed the world was a safe and beautiful place. Across the road, Nicholas Grant, a man most people in town would only ever see on the cover of a business magazine, stepped out of a black luxury car. His tall frame was wrapped in an immaculate black suit, his tie perfectly knotted, his shoes gleaming like mirrors. But his face, pale. His eyes were tired. He hadn't eaten since dawn. The weight of $1 million deal gone wrong, a restless night, and endless decisions pressed heavily against his chest. He glanced at his watch, then at the pedestrian light ahead. He didn't notice how his steps had grown slower, how his breath had turned shallow. The world around him seemed to dull. The chatter of people, the rumble of traffic, even the clinking of coffee cups from the cafe on the corner. Halfway across the busy road, it hit him. A sharp spin in his vision, a hollow ringing in his ears. His knees wobbled, the sunlight felt blinding, and his chest clenched painfully. In that instant, Nicholas's body gave up. He collapsed hard onto the asphalt. A brief, stunned silence. Then at the screech of brakes, a car horn blared. Another driver swerved violently to avoid hitting him. Pedestrians slowed, staring with curiosity rather than urgency. Some whispered, "Is he drunk?" Others simply stepped around him. But on the corner, Jennifer had frozen mid-step. Her big hazel eyes widened as she saw the man in the black suit lying still on the road. Her little heart pounded. She didn't think about danger or strangers or anything at all. She just knew someone needed her. Without hesitation, she darted toward the crosswalk. Her shoes slapped against the pavement as she ran, gripping her bunny in one hand like a brave little soldier clinging to courage. When she reached him, she dropped to her knees. "Mister, wake up, please!" she cried, her voice high and trembling. Nicholas's eyelids fluttered, but no words came. Jennifer's tiny hands shook as she touched his arm, giving it a gentle shake. Nothing. She quickly slid her backpack off her shoulders, unzipped it, and pulled out a half-full plastic water bottle, the one her mom had given her that morning. "Here, drink," she whispered, tilting it toward his lips with all the care in the world. A small trickle of water touched his mouth. His throat moved faintly, instinctively swallowing. She glanced up at the cars that were still edging around them, frustration boiling in her little voice. "Help! Somebody help him!" she shouted with all her might. For a terrifying moment, nobody moved. Then the roar of a motorcycle engine cut through the air. A man in a leather jacket skidded to a stop and jumped off. "I'm calling an ambulance," he said urgently, pulling out his phone. Jennifer didn't move from Nicholas's side. She placed her tiny hand over his much larger one, squeezing it as if to promise she wouldn't let go. The sound of sirens began faint in the distance, growing louder by the second. She leaned down close to his ear, her voice soft now. "It's okay, mister. You'll be fine. I'm right here." When the paramedics arrived, they worked quickly, lifting Nicholas onto the stretcher. But even as they carried him toward the ambulance, Jennifer trotted beside them, clutching his hand until the very last moment before the doors closed. The little girl stood there on the curb, watching the ambulance disappear down the road, her bunny hugged tightly to her chest. She didn't know his name. She didn't know who he was. She didn't even know she had just changed his life forever. 2 days later, the rhythmic beep of a heart monitor was the first sound Nicholas heard as consciousness slowly returned to him. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled the air, and sunlight streamed through half-drawn curtains in a private hospital suite. His head felt heavy, but when he turned, his loyal assistant David was already by his side, relief washing over his face. "Sir, you're awake. We almost lost you." Nicholas's voice was hoarse. "What happened?" David hesitated, as if the truth was too strange to be real. You collapsed in the middle of the road. Dozens of people saw, but they just stood there. No one moved. Nicholas's brows furrowed, his breath shallow. No one? David's voice softened. No one, except a little girl. She's the reason you're alive. For a moment, Nicholas didn't speak. A swirl of disbelief and gratitude filled his chest. A little girl saved me, he whispered, almost to himself. David nodded. 5 years old. Her name is Jennifer. She ran to you, called for help, and refused to leave your side until the ambulance came. Nicholas closed his eyes, his mind replaying a scene he couldn't fully remember. Tiny hands, a soft voice, and the faint smell of something sweet, like strawberries. When he opened them again, there was determination in his gaze. I need to find her, he said firmly. 2 days later, a sleek black car pulled up to a modest neighborhood. The sharp click of polished shoes on the pavement contrasted with the quiet hum of the street. Nicholas stood in front of a small weathered house, holding a bouquet of white lilies in one hand and a small pink gift bag in the other. He knocked once, then again. The door opened slowly, and Laura Hayes froze. Her eyes widened as she took in the sight before her. A tall man in a tailored navy suit, dark hair perfectly in place, eyes warm yet unreadable. She recognized his face from newspapers and billboards, Nicholas Grant, the millionaire whose name carried weight in every corner of the city. I'm sorry, can I help you? She asked cautiously. Nicholas's voice was gentle but steady. Your daughter saved my life on the road. Laura blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. Behind her, a small head peeked out from behind her leg, soft brown curls framing a shy, curious face. Jennifer's big eyes locked on him, studying the stranger like he was both magical and mysterious. Nicholas's lips curved into a warm smile. Slowly, he knelt down until he was eye level with her. Hello, Jennifer, he said softly. I'm Nicholas. I heard you were the bravest person in the whole city this week. Jennifer's tiny fingers gripped her mother's dress, but her lips twitched into a shy smile. Nicholas reached into the pink bag and pulled out a small box wrapped with a white ribbon. This is for you, he said, opening it to reveal a delicate silver bracelet with her name engraved in elegant letters. Her eyes widened as she touched it gently, almost afraid it might disappear. Nicholas looked back at Laura, his expression sincere. I know this isn't enough to thank her, but I'd like to take you both to lunch, to thank you properly. Laura's lips parted, unsure how to respond. People like him didn't sit at the same tables as people like her. Her life was full of bills, long hours, and second-hand clothes, not fine restaurants and crystal glasses. She was ready to refuse, but then Jennifer looked up at her with eyes sparkling brighter than the bracelet. Please, Mommy, she whispered. Laura hesitated for a long moment, and then she nodded. Nicholas's smile deepened. In that small, quiet moment, none of them knew that this visit would change their lives forever. The elevator ride itself felt like magic. Jennifer stood between Nicholas and Laura, clutching her mother's hand, her tiny shoes tapping the marble floor as the numbers climbed higher and higher. She had never been in a building this tall before. Every ding of the elevator made her little heart pound faster. When the doors opened, the smell of fresh flowers and warm bread wrapped around them. They stepped into a hall that glittered with light. Above their heads, a crystal chandelier shimmered like frozen raindrops caught in sunlight. The walls were lined with golden accents, the kind Jennifer had only seen in picture books. Nicholas smiled when he saw her wonder. This is just the beginning, he said softly, as though letting her in on a secret. They were guided to a table by a tall waiter in a black suit. The tablecloth was pure white, smooth as snow, with golden plates shining in front of them. Jennifer ran her small fingers along the edge of the plate, amazed at how heavy and cold it felt. Her eyes kept darting between the crystal glasses and the silver forks arranged in perfect order. Then she glanced out of the window and gasped. The world stretched far below her. Cars looked like little toys, people like tiny moving dots, and the river sparkled like a silver ribbon winding through the city. Her mouth stayed open in awe. Is it all ours to see? She whispered. Nicholas chuckled warmly. Yes, little one, the city is yours today. You're my guest of honor. The waiter placed warm bread rolls on the table, the steam curling up into the air. Jennifer reached for one, but paused when she saw 3 forks beside her plate. She frowned in confusion. Nicholas noticed and gently took the smallest fork, placing it in her hand. This one's for the salad, but don't worry about rules. Just enjoy. Laura watched quietly, her eyes softening. Her daughter had never been treated this way, like she was special, like her thoughts mattered. As they ate, Nicholas didn't speak of business or money or anything grand. Instead, he asked Jennifer questions in a voice that made her feel important. What's your favorite game? What's your favorite animal? What's your favorite color? Jennifer giggled between bites. I like hopscotch and I like cats, but only the cute ones, not the scary ones. Nicholas smiled like he'd just heard the most delightful confession. And what do you want to be when you grow up? Jennifer sat up straight, pride lighting up her face. I want to be a doctor, so I can help people, like I helped you. The air went still for a moment. Nicholas blinked, his lips parting, the weight of her words hitting him deeper than he expected. He remembered lying on the cold road, barely able to breathe, and then seeing this tiny face leaning over him, trying to wake him up. That's a beautiful dream, he said quietly. And I believe you'll make it come true. Dessert came, little chocolate cakes with gold dust sprinkled on top. Jennifer's eyes went wide again, and Nicholas laughed softly at her excitement. It had been years since laughter had felt so easy for him. When the meal was over, Nicholas stood and walked Laura a few steps away. His voice was low, but the sincerity in it was unmistakable. I owe your daughter my life, he said, glancing toward Jennifer. I don't want this to be the last time we meet. Laura hesitated, her fingers curling nervously around her purse strap. Nicholas didn't push further. But deep inside, he knew. This little girl had stepped into his world by chance, and somehow he couldn't imagine it without her anymore. Nicholas's life had always been full of glittering lights, sharp suits, and polished smiles. But ever since Laura and Jennifer had stepped into it, his days felt warmer, more human, yet warmth in a world built on cold glass towers drew shadows. In the towering boardroom of Wright Enterprises, murmurs began to circle like vultures. A few executives exchanged knowing glances. Some smirked, others frowned. A billionaire, one muttered over coffee. Spending time with a single mother from the other side of the tracks? Not a good look for investors? Nicholas ignored them at first, until the whispers reached louder places. The night of the Charity for Children Gala arrived. It was a palace of crystal and gold, music flowing softly from a grand piano in the corner. Guests wore diamonds like stars, their laughter echoing across the ballroom. Laura stood nervously in a simple but elegant dress Nicholas had gifted her, while Jennifer wore a pale blue gown that made her look like a tiny princess. Nicholas held their hands proudly as he led them through the crowd. But not everyone greeted them with smiles. A man in a white tuxedo, his voice dripping with mockery, stopped Nicholas in his tracks. You're bringing people from that side of the road into your world? He said loudly, his glass of champagne trembling slightly in his hand. Interesting choice, right? A few guests chuckled under their breath. Others simply stared, curious to see how Nicholas would respond. Jennifer looked up, confused. Her small fingers gripped Nicholas's hand tighter. She didn't understand the words, but she felt the air grow heavy. Her bright eyes searched his face. Did I make them mad at you? She asked softly, her voice barely a whisper. Nicholas felt something inside him crack, not from anger, but from the thought of her ever feeling unwanted. He knelt down to her level, the room around them fading away. He smiled gently, though his eyes carried a quiet storm. No, Jennifer, he said, brushing a stray curl from her forehead. You made me proud. You walked into this room and brought more light than it's ever seen. He glanced up at the crowd. They just don't understand kindness yet, he added, loud enough for the smirking man to hear. Some people think wealth is only about money. But I've learned it's about the people you choose to keep close. Laura's eyes glistened as she watched him, her heart pounding at the way he defended her daughter without a hint of shame. The man in the white tuxedo shifted uncomfortably, his smirk faltering under Nicholas's steady gaze. The onlookers quickly found somewhere else to look. The music swelled again. And Nicholas rose, taking Jennifer's hand in one and Laura's in the other. "Come on," he said warmly. "Let's find the chocolate fountain." And thus they walked away. Jennifer's small voice whispered with a smile. "Then they'll understand kindness, right?" Nicholas glanced at her, his heart swelling with a mix of pride and protectiveness. "Someday, sweetheart, and until then, we'll just keep showing them what it looks like." The evening sparkled with golden lights. Chandeliers glimmered like frozen stars, and the grand ballroom of Nicholas's company headquarters was alive with music, laughter, and polite conversations. The annual family celebration was his way of thanking employees. But tonight, Nicholas had a different glow in his eyes, because Jennifer and Laura were there. Laura, in a pale yellow dress with a ribbon in her hair, twirled clumsily on the marble floor while holding a paper bunny Nicholas had given her. Jennifer stood beside Nicholas, her soft smile making the expensive room feel warmer than any chandelier could. But not everyone shared that warmth. Across the room, a group of sharply dressed investors eyed Nicholas like predators waiting for the perfect moment. They didn't care about ribbons or bunnies. They cared about numbers, deals, and image, and in their minds, a poor single mom from the other side of the road didn't fit. One of them, an older man with a voice as cold as steel, leaned in and said quietly, "Wesley, I'll be blunt. People are talking. This woman and her child, they're not good for your reputation. End it before it costs us all." Nicholas's jaw clenched. He had heard these words before, in boardrooms, whispered in corridors. But tonight, the cruelty pressed harder. As their voices layered over each other, he felt it. That old, creeping pressure in his chest. The heaviness. The way the room seemed to shrink, the air growing thinner. His fingers curled around the edge of the table, his knuckles white. And then, his vision blurred. The chandelier's glow became too bright. The sound of the music seemed to come from far away. The laughter turned into an echo in a tunnel. He excused himself, though the word caught in his throat, and stumbled toward the balcony doors. The cool night air hit his face, but the dizziness didn't stop. His breaths came short, uneven. His heart pounded against his ribs like it was fighting to escape. Inside, Laura was chasing her paper bunny across the floor when she froze. She spotted him, leaning on the balcony rail, one hand clutching his chest. "Mr. Nicholas," she whispered. Something in her small heart knew. She didn't think. She ran. The paper bunny fell to the marble floor and slid away as she dashed past waiters weaving between guests in glittering gowns. Her little shoes tapped fast against the floor. When she reached him, she grabbed his hand with all the force her tiny fingers could hold. "Mr. Nicholas, look at me. Just like the doctor said, in and out, remember?" Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the fog in his mind like sunlight breaking through clouds. Nicholas blinked. His breathing was ragged, but her wide, worried eyes anchored him. She pressed her other hand to his chest. "Breathe, Mr. Nicholas, like this, see? In, out." He tried. The first inhale was shaky. The exhale trembled. But she stayed there, counting softly, her small hands steady against his much larger ones. From the doorway, Jennifer appeared, panic in her eyes. But she didn't rush in. She saw her daughter holding him up in a way no doctor, no investor, no assistant ever could. Slowly, the pounding in his chest eased. The world came back into focus. The night sky, the silver moon, the faint hum of the city below. Nicholas straightened, still gripping her hand like a lifeline. His voice was hoarse when he finally spoke. You saved me again, little one." Laura grinned, a touch shy but proud. "Guess I'm really good at it now." Jennifer stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "She is," she said softly, her eyes glistening. "And you're good at letting her." Nicholas looked at both of them, the mother who had unknowingly brought light into his life, and the child who had become his heartbeat's steady rhythm. For a man surrounded by wealth, this moment was the richest he had ever felt. That night, Nicholas gathered everyone at the event. With one hand on Jennifer's small shoulder, he said, This little girl saved my life, not once, but twice. She didn't care who I was, how much I was worth, or where I came from. She saw someone in need and helped. That is real courage. And if anyone here thinks kindness depends on your background, your bank account, or your skin color, you are wrong. The room went silent. A few people lowered their eyes in shame. In the following weeks, Nicholas launched the Jennifer Hayes Scholarship Fund for children from struggling families. Laura no longer had to work long double shifts, and Jennifer grew up knowing she had changed not only one man's life, but the way people around him saw the world. Because kindness doesn't care where you're from, and sometimes the smallest hands can hold the biggest hearts. Moral of the story: true kindness sees no race, no wealth, and no status. It comes from the heart. Even the smallest act of compassion can shatter prejudice, change lives, and remind the world that humanity is our greatest treasure.